orbital.
RCP chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger roll with Lennox.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Ego Delta nominal.
Flight down speed off. Bring in speed off. Off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
Sure. Yeah. All right, let's see how this works here. Real quick, doing something different again today with what's left of my voice. I'm going to stay back at the computer to make sure that y'all can hear me. Excuse me there, geez. Oh, yeah, you're on. Okay, wait, I'm on. I should stand in front of the camera then. Hang on. We've got a very light crew here working on things, but we're out at Intrepid Sierra and Space Museum again. I talked way too much yesterday, so my voice is a little gravelly here today. But give me some 5x5s in chat. Let me know that you can hear and see what's going on. Again, we are actually out at Intrepid Sierra and Space Museum. I got some thumbs up from behind the camera. Nice. We're out at Intrepid Sierra and Space Museum. It's Kids Week. You can see there's back on the sign. I got to move the chair out of the way. But they've got all these NASA booths. If you saw our member stream yesterday, we were walking around talking to all the NASA people about what's going on. People from Goddard, people from SLS, Artemis, HLS. Thanks for watching the stream during your meetings, HLS folks. We appreciate you. But in just a few minutes here, we're going to be doing our NSF Live. But it's going to be a different NSF Live this month. We're going to start with a presentation on the stage behind us. It's going to be Mike Massimino, the guy, shuttle astronaut multiple times, went up there, serviced the huddle, ripped the handle off, you know all that. And then Jessica Watkins, who just flew on SpaceX's Crew 4 Dragon, the expedition up to the International Space Station. So they're going to do a little Mike and Jessica chat down on the stage for like 40 minutes or something. There's going to be some audience Q&A for the audience here. And then Jessica's going to come up here where we have these fine Intrepid Sierra and Space Museum chairs. And Jessica's going to hang out with us for a little while. So literally just came back from the space station. I think it was October, on the Crew Dragon. And she's going to come and spend a little bit of time talking with you and me. So we're going to be taking some questions when we do that. Put your questions in chat just like we always do. And over the course of the stream, if you ask questions during the main show where they're down on the stage, then I'm going to take those questions and keep them in a queue. And when Jessica comes up here to hang out with us, then I'll ask her a couple of those questions. We may not have time to ask every single question ever that anybody could possibly ask, right? But my poor voice. That is the plan for today. Mike Massimino, Jessica Watkins, talking about life in space at first, and then afterwards, Jessica coming up here to sit down with us and have the rest of the show good to go, I guess is the right way to say it. Another important thing, here at 3 o'clock, what time is it right now? They're starting at 3 o'clock. Yeah. And it's reminding me to record locally. Hit the record locally button on the camera. I got a calendar reminder. In about 4 minutes, the actual show is going to start. We're not in the actual show yet. I just wanted to explain to the NASA spaceflight, the Twitch people who are always here, what the plan was. But the main event and our chat with Jessica is actually going to have an ASL interpreter. Always trying to increase the accessibility. We didn't have the interpreter for this part. But again, this is just to explain to the normal audience what's going on. And as soon as we get into the main show with Mike and Jessica down on the stage, we'll have, that's actually what this camera's for, we'll have a camera picture-in-picture with the ASL interpreter. We'll have Mike and Jessica doing the talk. And then when Jessica comes up here to chat with us, the ASL interpreter is coming with us as well. So at 3 o'clock when the main show starts, in just a couple minutes here, we will have the full-on NSF Live, Intrepid Astro Live, the collaboration streams that we do once a month or whichever. We'll have the ASL interpreters, we'll have the picture-in-picture, the whole shooting match. I just wanted to start a couple seconds earlier here. Elysia is taking pictures of me. I'm not sure I signed the waiver for that. But I just wanted to explain to the normal viewers what the plan for today was, because once again, we're doing something a little bit different than we normally do. I will be here. I'll be reading and interacting in chat while they're doing the presentation, and that's the plan. How are we looking on time? 2:58. So we got to get this camera set for the main stage. We're going to change cameras real quick, and when we come back, the main show should start. Just give us a second or two to move this camera. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Mike and Jessica talking in a second.
All right, thank you, everyone. Well, hello and welcome to Kids Week at the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum. And hello to everyone tuning in from home for our Astro Live. Hi, everyone from the crowd say hi too. Hey! Awesome. So my name's Elysia. I'm the producer of public programs here at the Intrepid Museum. And we have so many really exciting things happening all week long during Kids Week. So those of you who are here today, you are experiencing one of our NASA days. We have a lot of friends here from many divisions across the country of NASA talking about all of the cool work they're doing in so many different fields. And throughout the week, we've got more performances, we have zoo animals, all sorts of fun things. But today, of course, now for Astro Live, we have a very, very special thing for you here. So this is actually going to be streamed now, hello, from our Astro Live program. All right, if you're not familiar, this is a free online show that we do once a month where we talk to scientists and engineers who are doing really amazing things in space. And it's all thanks in part to a NASA cooperative agreement awarded to the New York Space Grant Consortium. So we thank them for sure. But this month, we are so thrilled to be welcoming a very special guest on stage, NASA astronaut Jessica Watkins, who will be in conversation with former NASA astronaut and the Intrepid Museum's own Senior Advisor for Space Programs, Mike Massimino. So I will welcome you all on stage now to start off. All right, so Jessica, I believe you've referred to yourself in the past as a rock nerd.
That's true, yes.
She was telling us a bit about some of her geological experiences earlier today. So Jessica has a doctorate in geology from UCLA. She's worked at NASA Ames and NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, and she was even a science team collaborator for the Curiosity rover on Mars. She was selected as a member of the 2017 astronaut candidate class and recently served as a mission specialist on NASA's SpaceX Crew 4 mission to the International Space Station. While there, she spent 6 months in space observing and photographing geological changes on Earth, studying space and biological science, and also the effects of long-duration spaceflight on humans. And while doing so, she also made history as only the 5th black woman to ever travel into space and the first black woman to join a long-duration expedition to the International Space Station. Congratulations, that's amazing. So I am so thrilled to introduce here now for you Mike Massimino and Jessica Watkins. This is going to be wonderful. Take it away.
Thank you all very much for coming, and thank you, Jessica, for coming. I'm really thrilled to get a chance to talk to you here today and learn more about you and your experiences, and then we'll go to some questions after we chat for a little bit. Why don't we start from the beginning? So you grew up in Colorado, is that right?
That's right. Yep.
And what kind of perked your interest as a kid? You know, you see a lot of these little kids here. Like when you were their age, what perked your interest that led you to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when I think back to when I was you all's age, I think what really started exciting me and getting me interested in space and all things related to it were just lots of little opportunities that I had. So I would participate in some summer camps and different like enrichment activities that were happening in the Boulder area. I remember one particular event that I went to. We went and had different stations, and one of the stations we got to dissect cow eyeballs. And I remember getting to bring home the cow eyeball, which I don't think my parents were very happy about. But that type of experience where I was getting to do hands-on science and really start to explore and ask questions, I think that's really what started to pique my interest in the sciences.
And then when did your interest in geology? Because the astronauts have all different types of backgrounds, and you said there's a few geologists, but not a whole lot over the life of NASA since they've been picking. Harrison Schmitt went to the moon as a geologist. Drew Feusel, he mentioned Joe Acaba, and so on. But what got you interested in geology, and did you see a path to space with geology, or was it just something that you were interested in?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And so it's really important that what you mentioned, that there are many different pathways to get to being an astronaut. And that was something that I didn't fully understand when I was younger. So when I went to college, as I came in as an undergraduate, I first started out studying mechanical engineering. So I came in as an engineer largely because I thought that was what I had to do in order to kind of keep the door open for being an astronaut. And so I came in, started doing engineering, and really just found that was not something that I loved. It was not something I was passionate about, and it was just not something that I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And so I was kind of at this crossroads where I had to make a decision about whether I continued to do something that I didn't enjoy or didn't love in order to pursue what was kind of a far-off dream, or do I find something that I'm really passionate about that makes me want to get out of bed in the morning and see what happens. And so for me, it was in that moment that I kind of sat down and found some classes that seemed interesting to me. They all happened to be in geology. After taking my first geology class, I fell in love. And luckily for me, geology is a science field, and so it actually still kept the door open for me to eventually be able to be an astronaut. But there's a really important lesson there for me that I learned about finding something that's really true to who you are, really something that you enjoy, and that success will follow as a result of that, instead of following the pathway that you think you have to follow to pursue your dreams.
So that's, I think, really good advice for anything. And that's the advice I'm sure you would give young people. Follow what you're interested in, and it will lead you to the right place. Yeah. And you mentioned you were interested in the astronaut program, and that's why you were thinking maybe engineering, and then you decided to go with your passion. What got you interested in becoming? Was there like a moment you can remember, or a time, or something happened becoming an astronaut, traveling in space, or doing that job? When did that light bulb come on?
Yeah, for me, so I went to one of these kind of enrichment programs that I was talking about. One of them happened at the Judith Resnick Elementary School. And so Judy Resnick was an NASA astronaut. And I remember kind of coming home, asking my parents about who she was and what her kind of life story was. And that was the first time that I learned that you could be an astronaut. You could go to space as your job. And when I discovered that that was a real thing I could do, I was definitely hooked.
And you were how old when?
About 9 or 10.
9 or 10. So 9 or 10, the seeds were planted. Thought it would be engineering.
Yep.
Switched to geology when you were at Stanford,
Yep.
and then onward with the geology.
Yep, the stars aligned.
Now, you did some other really cool things. Right? Some of the other things you did. What else did you do? Like extracurricular activities in high school and what ended up going in college?
Yeah, so when I was in high school and younger than that as well, I did a lot of sports. So I played basketball and soccer and ran track in high school. So when I came to college, I was looking for some kind of athletic endeavor, some way to participate in athletic events. And so I actually found a rugby team. So I had not played rugby before. Some of you probably haven't heard of rugby, but hopefully that's changing. Rugby is an awesome sport. And I had the opportunity eventually to play for the team at my school and then on the national team a little bit as well. So one of the really neat things that I love about rugby is that it is a sport that requires people of all different skill sets and strengths to come together and use those strengths to be successful. Different body types, different, some speed or size or whatever it is that you bring to the table. And I find that human spaceflight is very similar. We are at NASA and with all of our partners, we are a huge interdisciplinary team. So we all have different things that we do, different skill sets that we bring to the table, and it's the combination of all of that expertise that allows us to be successful and to have successful missions.
And you were able to, you picked up rugby in college? So
Yep.
you didn't play before?
That's right.
But you were an athlete before, and then but you were very successful as a rugby player. Your team won a national championship. You're an All-American. You played on. So you were a quick learner in that as well, apparently.
Yeah, there's a lot of applicable skills from previous sports.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a super fun journey for me.
But I like what you said too about the team atmosphere of it, of being able to have a goal as a group of people as opposed to an individual.
Exactly.
And that is what you're saying. That really helps. That helped you in your career at NASA. That experience.
Absolutely, yeah. That teamwork aspect is just so important to what we do. Even we think about the larger team of NASA, our international partners, our commercial partners, but even just the small team dynamics. So on the International Space Station, I had my 3 crewmates who were part of the Crew 4 mission with me, and then our 3 cosmonaut colleagues as well. So 3 Russians that were up there with us as well. And so the 7 of us, we were all each other had. We were the only faces that we saw for 6 months. We were interacting with each other, having dinner together, working together, and so that teamwork aspect becomes really important in terms of just your emotional well-being, and then just being able to be productive and get the mission done.
All right, so Stanford, playing rugby, discovering your affection for geology, and then graduating Stanford. Did you know you wanted to go to graduate school right there? And what happened at that crossroads? What decisions were made, and how did you move on from there after college?
Yeah, as I was kind of deciding on next steps after college, I decided that going to graduate school was a good idea for me, and so looked into different graduate schools that were working on different aspects of geology. And for me, even before I really started studying it, I found that planetary geology was a field that existed that I could go into and research. And I was really intrigued by the idea of being able to study the rocks and the surfaces of other planets. And particularly for me, I was really interested in Mars. And so I decided to go to grad school so that I could do more of that research on Mars specifically. My undergraduate was focused on geology, on Earth geology, and then in graduate school I was able to kind of apply some of that understanding and knowledge to the geology of Mars.
And and you also did some work at NASA Ames at a NASA center at the Jet Propulsion Lab. Was that like summer job stuff, or how did your working with the space program get started?
Yeah, that's right. So I worked at NASA Ames while I was in undergraduate. It was just across the street from me. And that was just a really amazing opportunity. I still remember the first day that I got my first email from somebody from NASA. I received that email that said, you know, we received your application to come work for us, and we'd love to have your help. And that was the beginning of a journey I couldn't have imagined. But being able to be a part of those kinds of internships, those summer internships at Ames, and then also at JPL a little bit later, that's what really allowed me to find what it was that I was interested in. It was more of that kind of hands-on experience that allowed me to participate in some missions, and particularly some Mars missions, and that really helped pave the way for me, or create a path towards a career path that I was really interested in.
So, grad school, UCLA, Martian rock research, and so on. When you were thinking at that point of a career, was it, I'm applying to be an astronaut, or do you have a backup plan, or what were you thinking? What was going through as you were leaving UCLA and going to the next step? What was going through your mind then?
Yeah, you definitely want to have a backup plan. Being an astronaut is not a good first plan, just in terms of just the numbers, are just statistics are not generally in your favor, and I really just didn't think that it would be a reality that would come true for me. So I definitely was trying to kind of keep the door open and allow that to still be a possibility, but was really kind of focusing my career on what I was interested in doing and what I was interested in working on. And so that's when I kind of found the Curiosity rover, the Mars rover, and I knew that was something that I was really excited about working on. Just the experience of being able to work in this awesome team every day, to give you an idea of what operating a rover is like. Every day we wake up, we receive images that no one else has seen before. This is, you're one of the first 10 to 20 people to see this place on Mars that the rover has taken pictures of the night before. You look at these images, you and a team of scientists, 400 scientists across the world, are deciding together what is interesting in this field of view. What do we want to go and investigate further? What instruments do we want to use to investigate that particular area? And so you're kind of deciding that as a group, and then you go and you take that proposal to the engineers, who inevitably tell you that hill is too steep, or the wheels will get stuck if we go over here. And so it's this constant working together and finding a solution that is going to provide the most science but be safest for the vehicle. And so to be a part of that kind of operational environment where scientists and engineers are working together every day to accomplish such an amazing feat was really an important lesson for me heading into human spaceflight, where that is what we do every day, operating the International Space Station.
How did you get that gig, working the rover? Because that was a postdoc that you were doing at Caltech. Did that just happen to work out somehow, or did you say, nah, I want to be one of those 10 people looking at those rover pictures?
Yeah, so good question. So that opportunity came as a result of the internship that I did at JPL when I was a graduate student. And so that opportunity put me in touch with some of the people, some of the management that was working with the rover. And so when I was looking for opportunities to work on the rover, I had those relationships and those mentors to be able to reach out to. And so it's a real testament to having mentors and role models and a support network that will really help encourage you, support you along your path, and help provide opportunities that can help you along your career.
So, Jessica, it appears to me that when you had gone through all the schooling and athletics and
grad school. When you ended up in that rover job, that's a pretty good job, right? That could have been something that you could have done for a long time. And you started that when? That was in what year?
It was in 2015.
2015. Okay. But now, the thing that's always lurking is, right? The thing that's always lurking is the application to NASA. And as you said, that's not anything that you can count on. When I was applying, I think we had like 6,000 or 7,000 applicants for larger classes. Typically, my class was 35 Americans with 20 or so. But I think just to give the folks an idea of how unlikely this is. It's not like you can't say I'm going to grow up to be. I mean, it's great, I want to be. But you've got to realize that it's not easy, right? But that's okay. But it's not impossible. It's just this and that's not, okay.
Yep.
I don't want to scare anybody. But just to give an idea, was there like 18,000 applicants your year? So 18,000.
Yeah.
And how many were being selected in the class of 2017?
12 Americans.
12 Americans out of 18,000 applications. So
There you go. I think it's worth an applause. But that should not scare anyone about applying.
Absolutely.
You've got to try. It's not zero. It just means that it's something you. And in my case, I got told no 3 times.
Right.
So I had 3 no applications. They said no. And I tried again a couple years later. No. Then I tried again. I got an interview. They got to know me. No. And then I got on the 4th try. So, but that's always lingering. You want to have a happy career, but then you want to throw the application in.
Yeah.
So tell us about your NASA application and going through that routine, and what was that like for you going through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something important about what you said, and it kind of ties back to what I was saying earlier, that I think all of us that end up in this position, we all come from a career where we were doing something that we really fully enjoyed, would have enjoyed doing for the rest of our lives, and that being in this spot, being in this role is really just a cherry on top. I think that's an important thing to find, is something that you would enjoy doing the rest of your life if that ends up being the case. But yeah, luckily for me, I applied, and I certainly agree. The only way to be sure that you're not going to be selected is to not apply. So that is the way to become an astronaut is to apply. And so I did that. Really just an amazing experience, even just the selection process, the interview process that we've been a part of. You come in, they bring you down to the Johnson Space Center in Houston, and come with a group of about 10 or so people for a few days to a week. And it was really just amazing getting to spend that time with those other people, getting to know what they have been doing with their lives. They all have such amazing, interesting stories. Getting to learn from them about what they do was an amazing experience in of itself. And then out of that group of amazing folks, I ended up with my classmates. And all of my classmates do something very different. So I'm a geologist. We have military test pilots. We have biologists, teachers, engineers. We have all kinds of different folks even in my class alone, let alone in the entire course. So again, it's whatever is interesting to you is what you should pursue to end up where we're at.
So you become an astronaut, you have your initial training and so on, and you're hired as an astronaut candidate, right? That's the way it always has been. And you go through 2 years of training, and for your focus training was space station. What did you guys focus on in your initial training as an astronaut candidate?
Yeah, that's right. And that was something interesting that we kind of chatted about at the Mike has had a bit of a different experience coming into the astronaut office at a different time when we were focused more on space shuttle, and so a lot of his training was on the shuttle. But for us, our training coming in was on the International Space Station, and so we do several different types. We learn about the systems of the International Space Station, how it works. We do spacewalk training. So we learn the ins and outs of the EMU spacesuit, the big puffy white spacesuit, and we can learn how to do spacewalks. So we have a giant pool, the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory in Houston, and it is, I believe it's 40 feet deep. and has mock-ups of the International Space Station, the outside. And so we can go down underwater in our spacesuits, and we can climb around on the outside of the ISS, and that's how we learn how to do spacewalks. We also do training in a jet. We do flight training in the T-38s, and we do robotics training and Russian language as well, because the ISS has both a U.S. segment and a Russian segment, which is where our Russian colleagues live and do their work. So yeah, very varied training when we first arrived.
So that was your first couple of years, and then you guys had a graduation ceremony.
We did.
Yep. You get your little silver pin.
Yep, that's right.
That's the way the traditions still live on. You get a little silver pin, and that's good. And then you're eligible to be assigned to a flight.
Right.
And I'm trying to do the math in my head, which is always challenging. But you got assigned pretty early on, it seemed like so it's 2 years of your ASCAN training. More.
Yep. It ended up being a little bit longer because
longer.
of some other pieces of our training. But
okay.
yeah, so we graduated in early 2020.
So early 2020, now you're eligible to fly in space. And then what happened then? Then you're working a job, you're still doing training, and eventually get assigned, that next phase.
Yep. Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah. And so we, in the in-between phases, so prior to flight, and then also what I'm in right now. So after flight, we take on different technical roles in the office. In the astronaut office, so doing different things to help out with human spaceflight in whatever capacity is necessary. So we're doing that kind of while you wait to get assigned to a mission, and then luckily for me that came pretty quickly. Yeah.
And so when and how did you find out that you were going to fly to space? When were you assigned to that mission? How did that happen?
Yeah, so for me, it ended up being a little bit later in the process than usual, but I started training for a potential mission. It was probably about a year out that I started training for a mission, and then a few months later, it actually kind of became official. And so, it's a pretty amazing moment to really kind of, this is the moment that you've been working towards for a pretty long time, and so to have that really come to fruition and just the excitement about the adventure ahead was pretty awesome.
So you're showing your crew photo right there with Chell, and he goes by Farmer. Is that okay? Yep. And then Samantha Cristoforetti, I remember from my days.
Yeah.
When were you officially assigned as a crew? When did that happen? Was that how far ahead of time from your launch day was that?
Yeah, so I was the final puzzle piece, and so that happened in November, so that's probably about 6 months prior to actually launching. Yeah, so a little bit later than usual.
Yeah, that seems like a quick flow. Yeah. You get 6 months from assignment, so that's pretty quick. Yeah. That's atypical though, you're saying? It doesn't? Okay, yeah. But again, fast learner. Yeah. So you're able to pick it up and go right in there. Okay, cool. So take us through that, the experience, the launch experience. I'm sure for you, I'm sure your family and friends and the whole, it's a big build up, quite an experience, and then actually getting to get in the rocket ship and what was that like with your crew and everything around the rocket launch?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the really neat privileges that we got to experience was being able to launch from the U.S. So, of course, when Mike was launching, we did all of our launches and landings here in the U.S. with the space shuttle. But then after that time period, in order to get to the International Space Station, our only vehicle available was a Russian vehicle, the Soyuz. And so that launches and lands in and around Russia. And so with the commercial crew program, relatively new program that NASA's part of, that is what allows us to partner with SpaceX and Boeing as well to provide vehicles that launch and land here in the U.S. And so because of that, this was the neutral buoyancy laboratory that I was talking about earlier, the giant pool, by the way.
And the big suit.
And the suit, oh yeah, I can barely see that, but yeah. And so it was a real unique privilege, actually, to be able to launch from Florida. We launched from Cape Canaveral at the Kennedy Space Center. And so one of the neat parts about that is when we were launching from Russia, we had a limited number of people that could come and visit and watch the launch. We had, I think it was 10 to 15 or so invitations that we were able to give out. However, as you know very well, in Florida, the number is almost unlimited. I don't know the number of people the number of invitations they gave us. I don't know that many people, and so. But it was really, really awesome to be able to have just that support and that community of your family and friends surrounding you, and during the build up to the launch, it was really pretty neat. And then to be able to suit up in the suit room that has such a storied history at NASA. It's the same suit room that the first astronauts suited up in and put on their suits and walked out to their rocket. So to be able to be kind of a small part of that legacy was pretty amazing as well. But anyway, then once we get on top of the rocket itself, get into the capsule in our suits, you feel the rocket spool up underneath you, and just this amazing feeling of both the kind of the culmination of all of that training and build up. We just kind of went through, kind of my career up until that point. It all feels like it kind of leads to this moment. So there's kind of that culmination piece of it. But then there's also the commencement. It's also the start of this awesome adventure, this 6-month journey that's about to take place. So kind of the holding the emotions of both of those things at once, while of course staying focused on the operational mission at the same time. It's pretty awesome.
And yet, all space crews are good, but you had an exceptionally great, Shell
For sure.
I know fairly well, and Farmer was one of your classmates.
That's right.
That's special.
Yep.
And then you had Samantha.
Yep.
How did you guys, what was that like being with them, and how did that work, the bonding and the work and teamwork and all that with that great crew you were with?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely super lucky. And as you mentioned, yes, one of them was one of my classmates, and so we did a lot of our initial training together, so we knew each other very well. Chell was our amazing, fearless leader, commander, just a servant's heart, amazing guy. And then Samantha, as you mentioned, she and I actually participated in a NEMO mission. So NEMO stands for NASA Extreme Environments Mission Operations, I believe. And these are missions, underwater missions. So we go and we live in an underwater habitat. It's about 60 feet below the surface. There's a habitat that exists down there. We go and we live down there for 10 days and get to do lots of scientific experiments and go out on spacewalks on the ocean floor and check out all the biology. So we knew each other pretty well from that experience that we had together. So that was pretty neat. So yeah, we really gelled together super well as a crew. Super lucky to have them, and that really does end up being what makes your mission great, is being able to coalesce as a crew, lean on each other, depend on each other, and work together.
Awesome. So what was it like? You had a lot of experiences up there. Is there anything that you think about now that you're back more than something else? Was there a moment? What was it like up there? What did you bring back, or what did you in your mind, or what do you remember the most, or the highlights of that almost 6 months that you spent up there, which is quite a while?
Yeah, a few things definitely come to mind, but I think the thing that had the biggest impression on me, especially as a geologist, as a scientist, was really just looking out the window, which maybe sounds simple or silly, but being able to just watch the world go by. For me, being able to see field sites or places that I had been before or done work before, seeing them from kind of that orbital perspective was just pretty amazing. And also just to get kind of a global perspective on the Earth and just be able to see, how interconnected we all are, the, diversity of the planet, and just how fragile our oasis of life really is.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that strikes everyone, right? Is that view from the science perspective? Was there anything that was? All of science experiments are important, but did you have a favorite one, or one that you think was, this is really cool, it's going to make a big difference? Is there any of the science that you did that stands out to you more than anything else?
Yeah, I think one experiment that we participated in that I thought was really neat was it was called immunosenescence, and don't ask me how to spell it, but it was an experiment where we brought up human immune cells, like live immune cells, and we looked at them under a microscope, just like a microscope that you would look at school. And we're able to look at the immune cells and see how they were behaving, and particularly what the aging process is in microgravity. And what's really cool about that, I think, is that there are applications to back here on Earth on looking for different pathways of slowing down that aging process of immune cells back here on Earth. So to be able to be a part of something that's really pushing the bounds of the medical field and using the orbiting laboratory of the ISS in ways that can really help us back here on Earth was pretty exciting.
And I want to talk a little bit about the future, but there's a question I've got to ask you, though, and I need an honest answer on it. So I see these pictures over here over your shoulder. What's the story with the pizza? Because we didn't, on the space shuttle, we didn't have any pizza, and I don't think they had pizza on the space station. So I really miss pizza. I was only gone for 2 weeks, but you're in arguably one of the capitals of pizza in the world here in New York. I know Naples and Chicago. There are places that lay claim to pizza. But I miss pizza so badly that before we shut down the computer, I put in my order for pizza in Florida at a place that doesn't exist anymore, Jessica. It's called Abatino's. I went to Megan's launch. I tried with my son. I couldn't find a place. It's gone. But down at the Cape, so I was like, and I'm ordering a pizza. I don't trust any of my crewmen. So I really miss pizza, right? I ordered it from right before we shut down the computers. But now they have pizza. Is it any? This might only be interesting to me. I don't know, but I have to know. What is it? Does it taste good? Tell me the truth. Is it something that you'd actually want to eat, or is it?
I mean, it is. I'll say that it does not compare to New York pizza. That might be enough said there. However, when you're living on board for 6 months, you'll take pizza of any form. So.
That's good enough for me.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty good. So this is definitely an advancement in space travel.
Yeah.
I would say so that's, and I'm looking at, some of these pictures are amazing. The garden that you had there, and you ate some of this stuff too.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to be able to grow crops and learn how to grow plants without soil on the ISS.
Just amazing things. And you were there for 107. Did it get old ever? Were you ready to come home? I don't know if you really want to answer truthfully, because I've heard different. I was only up there for 2 weeks. It went by in a blink. It didn't matter. You really can't. But what was it? But you're ready to go back, obviously. Yeah. But what was that whole experience of being there for so long? Did you feel like you were like living there? Do you feel like you put your residences in your, you live there, right?
Yeah.
I was on a business trip, but is that the way? What did it feel like being up there for that long?
Yeah, it definitely. When it was time to leave, which is when you do, a lot of the kind of reflecting on your time up there, it certainly was bittersweet. You spend 6 months up there, it becomes your home. It really, like you said, you're really taking up residence there. And so leaving that, definitely there's some part of you that is knows that you're going to miss those views, you're going to miss floating around, you're going to miss getting to hang out with your friends all the time. So there's part of you that feels that. But also after 6 months, it's been a long time away from family and friends and everything you know and love, and pizza. And so you're definitely ready and excited to come back to that.
But you miss it? You're ready to go back? You want to go back?
I'm ready, yeah.
You're ready to go back, great. Let's talk, we've got a couple minutes, I think, for talking about the future, which really, it sounds like a slogan, but I think the future is now. And what I mean by that is we've been hoping to send astronauts to the moon, back to the moon to settle, a much different thing than we did 50 years ago when I was just a little boy. And since when I joined NASA, that's what everyone, let's go back. But now we have this big rocket ship that successfully went and came back. We're probably going to be assigning a crew to go back and orbit the moon. Tell us a little bit about what you're looking forward to regards to the future. I know space station is going to be around for a while, but also some of the other things that you're looking forward to as an astronaut for you or your colleagues or whoever might get a chance to go.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it is such an exciting time in human spaceflight right now. You mentioned some of those opportunities, even just with commercial crew. The SpaceX Dragon that I was on, as well as the Boeing Starliner, they just had their first uncrewed flight test. So they'll be sending up a crewed mission for the first time, hopefully this year. So that's super exciting to have that kind of redundancy and capability of sending people up to space. And then, as you mentioned, the NASA Artemis program is super exciting. We're going to be going back to the moon and going to the moon to stay. So going for a sustained long duration presence around the moon. And so, as you mentioned, yeah, we had Artemis 1, the first mission in this program, that went around the moon uncrewed. Around the moon and landed in November of last year. So that was super exciting. Flew on the SLS rocket, as you mentioned. Artemis 2 will be coming up here relatively shortly. As you mentioned, that will be a crewed mission going around the moon and back to Earth. And then lastly, we'll have, well, hopefully not lastly, but next, then we'll have Artemis 3, which will be sending crews actually down to the surface of the moon, getting to put boots on the ground again on the moon. So we are super excited about the opportunities there. We're definitely moving forward, moving quickly, and so we're really excited about that effort.
You mentioned in your initial training as an astronaut candidate was it almost exclusively space station training?
Yes,
yeah.
Though I should mention we also did get a little bit of geology training, which was probably my favorite 2 weeks of training.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So you're a ringer on that one. We got some of that too. But so other training. But as far as like for mission training, you were preparing for the station. Are you now getting training for a potential moon mission? I know you may not. Who knows who's going to go? But still, they got to figure out what they're going to do. A lot of it's development. Are you getting involved with some of it? Is the whole crew, the whole Corps getting involved with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, just mentioned geology training, so that will be a big part of the lunar training protocol is doing a lot of going to field sites and looking at rocks that will be similar to the ones we'll see on the moon. And that's very similar to what the Apollo guys did as part of their training to go back to the moon too. And then we also are starting to do different kinds of flight training as well. So looking at doing helicopter training. So because that type of training or that type of flying is pretty analogous to, very similar to landing on the surface. So we'll be doing some of that as an office. So yeah, just looking for new ways that we can kind of prepare ourselves. And then of course, eventually we'll be doing vehicle training as well on Orion itself and on HLS, the lander that SpaceX is building that will land on the moon.
I think it's a very, very exciting time for NASA and for what you're doing and your colleagues. It's something that we've been wanting to do for so long, to go back to them, get out of low Earth orbit's great. We want to stay there, for a long time. But this is a huge step, and it's happening right now. So I think It's very exciting. We were talking earlier. I was down in Houston for the reunion we had back in December, and I could feel the energy. It was different than I had experienced before. So a lot of exciting stuff to come, folks. You ready to turn it out to the crowd? Okay, so I've been lucky because I was able to hog up all of Jessica's time with my questions. So now let's turn it over to I think we have, what do we have? We have microphones, or how we? Okay, we've got a couple microphones here. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and a mic will appear, and Jessica will try to answer.
Hello. All right, first question over here.
Hello? Yeah. Hello, Jessica and Mike. Thank you for sharing this experience with us. I believe that everyone here at least once have dreamed about being an astronaut, so having you so close of us, it's amazing. This is a question for you, Jessica. What was the most challenging thing that you face on space, and how you overcome it?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think probably the most challenging thing is it's not one particular thing. And so hopefully I'm still answering your question, but I think what's most challenging is really just the diversity of things that we are involved in when we're training for and in space. And so no one particular thing is super challenging on its own or too challenging on its own, but the combination of kind of having to juggle many different hats and many different skill sets, even over the course of one day, that's definitely something that takes a little bit of practice, at least for me.
All right, over here.
Is it easy making a garden in space? And I have my second question. My second question is it fun being an astronaut?
The first question is it easy to do what in space?
To make a garden in space.
Make a garden. Yeah, so I think you saw some pictures of us growing some plants when we were on station. And so I wouldn't say it's easy necessarily, because how we grow a garden here on Earth is using soil. And in space, soil is too heavy and makes too much of a mess. And so we had to find new ways to grow plants. And so we used some techniques called hydroponics and aeroponics to grow crops in a different way. So it's not super easy, but we're figuring it out. And I forgot what your second question was. Was space fun?
Was it fun to be an astronaut?
Is it fun? It definitely is fun, yes.
What does gravity feel like?
What does gravity feel like? Do you mean microgravity, like floating around? Yeah.
Microgravity, where was the question? Thank you. Yes, microgravity feels like you're floating, which is maybe not super helpful. The closest that we can really come to feeling like you're floating is when you're in a pool, and you feel almost buoyant and kind of neutral. That's why we train in a giant pool, because that's as close as we can get to what it feels like to have zero gravity. So that's probably the closest feeling that it's similar to.
Okay, right behind him over here.
Does your food float?
Does your food float in space?
Yes, it does. So we have to do a good job of making sure that it doesn't float away. So our table that we have on the space station, we have a dining room table, but we have to put duct tape on the top of the table so that we can stick our forks and our food on there so it doesn't float away while we're trying to eat it.
Okay, over here.
How long does an average astronaut's career span?
How average time that we spend in space?
How long is your average career?
Oh, career.
Yeah. As an astronaut.
It depends. I think I really don't know what the average is. Some of my classmates. My example in my class, let's say that. So 1996, we had a couple people leave probably after just a few years, maybe get one space flight and leave. I was there for 18 years, but the last few years, I was only an active astronaut for most of that, I guess. I'm having to do too much math here, Jessica. 96 to 2011. What was that? 15 years. So I was 15 years as an active astronaut, and then 3 years as a management astronaut, and then so I had 18 years. So I think I was there maybe on average a little more than most of my classmates, but some of them are still there. Don Pettit, who is one of my best friends, he's much, believe it or not, much older than me, and he's still there, and is he flying again? Is that official?
Yeah.
So I saw him recently, and he said he may turn 70 years old when he's in. Is this all right? That's all much older than I am, and so Don is still there. So some folks do it for longer periods of time than others. It is the greatest job in the world, I think. So I think you want to try to do it as long as you can and feel like that's what you want to do. So I think it really depends on the individual. Some people shorter, some people longer. But you never. I don't know. I thought I would. When someone would have asked me ahead of time, I might have said, I don't know, 12 years or something like that. But you don't know how it's going to work out. There's a lot of twists and turns. So a lot of things to consider too. Your family and whatever else is going on in your life. But it is I would say this, it's a career.
You know, I think I don't know if this is really accurate, but I'll say it and you can correct me. It seemed like looking backwards, like before my classes, it seemed like there was shorter lengths of time. I think astronauts they would fly more frequently maybe, and maybe after 10 years that was kind of it. But now, like I said, there's a couple. Spanky too is in my class. Mike Fink was in my. Stephanie Wilson is still there. So there's a few people who were selected with me in 1996, which was 27 years ago. Is that the right math? They're still there. So I think now it's actually, is that fair to say? It's like more of a long-term career, I think, than it was before I was an astronaut.
Yeah, and I think there are a couple of reasons for that. One is, you know, we now are doing longer duration missions. So we're up there for 6 months, and so you kind of mentioned that in order to fly a couple of times, you have to be around for a little bit longer. And then also I think people are sticking around for all the exciting opportunities that we have coming up too. I think people are waiting around to see how they can help out with the effort with Artemis and commercial crew and everything. So I think that's part of it too.
Okay, back here.
So when you were selected to be in space for such a long period of time, did you have any personal effects that you wanted to experience, like a favorite song or something that you could relate to while you were away from Earth?
Yeah, so you mentioned a favorite song. So we are able to bring music up with us, and that actually starts on the launch pad. And so as we are driving up to our rocket, we have a playlist that we're playing in the car on the way. And so we're able to choose songs that are appropriate or fun for us. Or some of our favorite songs is to kind of get us pumped up on our way to the rocket. And then once we're on board, we have access to you know, whatever music we've sent up, and you can download music as well. So we have access to that helps connect us back to the Earth as well.
Okay, we have a question over here.
Hey, how's it going? Definitely amazing, and it truly is inspiring. My question is, with the loud decibels, do you experience any pain, or just dealing with the loud noises, high decibels in the rockets? And I'm wondering, have you met any deaf astronauts in general, or have you ever worked with anyone who is deaf?
So the first part of the question was, how do we deal with loud noises on station?
Yeah, just wondering, do people experience hearing loss just dealing with all the rockets? Is that a normal thing that occurs?
Yes. So it's definitely something that we look at and monitor. We have doctors who are keeping track for us our hearing loss over time, our hearing levels going into, during, and when we return, making sure that we haven't experienced too much loss. We have lots of hearing protection options while we're on board. So we have earplugs that are custom molded and allow the right frequencies. We also have over-the-ear headphones, which we use to do some of this hearing testing while we're on board. And then just different rules that we have in place where we have to have hearing protection around the loudest pieces of machinery that are on board. So it's definitely something we are aware of, and that teams are making sure that we're safe and you know, within the right levels.
And so as of right now, are you experiencing a hearing loss by any chance, or are you pretty solid?
So I think when I came back, I think my hearing levels were the same as they were when I left. So that's a good spot to be, I think.
And I was curious. I've seen a lot of deaf individuals working in the astrology field, and saying that they dealt with hearing or ear pain just dealing with the atmospheric pressures. I was wondering, is that still prevalent now, even though we have new technology to deal with stuff like that?
So you're talking about ear pain on orbit? Yeah. So we do experience a fluid shift when we first arrive on orbit. So the fluids in your body shifts up towards your head, and so that can create some pressure inside your head that can maybe result in the ear pain that you're referring to. But it goes away after a few days, at least in my case.
Thank you.
All right, over here.
Is it comfortable to be an astronaut? In an astronaut suit?
Is it comfortable to be in an astronaut suit?
Yeah, so I think it depends on which suit you're in. So Mike and I we wore different suits when we went up to be astronauts. You didn't wear a suit at all, did you?
No, for launch we had the LES, the ACES, the orange suit, and then that was okay. It was a little bulky, but you could move around that pretty good. And then the EMU, the spacewalking suit, is not very comfortable. You try to make it as comfortable as you can, but it's not. You can't walk around with it on Earth. It's only to be used in space. But comfort is important. You want to be as comfortable as possible. So they work pretty well, but they're probably not anything you'd want to wear. Watching television, the actual space suits when you're lounging around. What was the SpaceX suit like for you? Was that like a custom-made suit, your launch suit?
Yeah, it's custom, and so it definitely has an eye for the aesthetics side of it as well. But yeah, it was pretty comfortable to wear for a short period of time. But what's neat is that we don't have to wear suits all the time. So while we're on board on the ISS, we are able to just wear a T-shirt and shorts, just like you would here on the ground. So we have a nice, comfortable living environment while we're working.
Okay, over here. Run.
Have yourself entertained while you're in space?
Yeah, good question. So we have access to lots of different kinds of entertainment while we're on board. So we have a telephone that we can use to call our loved ones on the ground. We can also video chat. We have to have enough bandwidth to do that, so we can't do that all the time, but sometimes we can do that, just like I'm sure you've done with your family in the past couple of years. So we do that, and then we also have tablets that have different apps on them, just like you have probably on your phones or something like that here on the ground. So we can listen to music and watch movies and TV while we're on board, after our work's done, of course.
Okay, and right behind him.
Is it scary in space?
It's not scary. So we are able to, the reason that we don't have to be scared is because we have such an amazing team of people that help make sure everything that we are working with and flying on is super safe. And we have a whole team of people that 24/7, so all the time, are monitoring everything on board for us, making sure that everything is exactly how it's supposed to be, and that we're all safe and ready to go. So that allows us to not have to be afraid, because we have such an awesome team of people taking care of us.
And right over here.
Can you guys see other planets?
You were closer than I was.
Yeah, not by much. You can see so you're a little bit closer to the stars and the planets, so you can see them. But what I found the most interesting difference is that stars and planets, when you see them in space, they don't twinkle, because the atmosphere is we can. It's kind of like if you're in the bottom of a pool. The Hubble guys told me this one. If you're in the bottom of a pool looking up, in the summertime, it's kind of blurry. You can't see very well. And then you get out of the pool, and all of a sudden it becomes much clearer to you. That's kind of what the atmosphere does in our ability to see stars. Even though we don't think of it that way, even on a very clear night in a place remote, away from New York City, out in the country, you can see the stars pretty clearly, but still they twinkle. And that's because the light is being affected as it comes through the atmosphere. When you're in space, like we were, you're above that atmosphere and you see directly into the stars and the planets, and they all are perfect points of light, which was really spectacular to see that. And there's nothing in the way of your view. So you're not that much closer to them, but you can see them more clearly.
And what did you think of the moon? The moon to me was a lot different because I think of the moon as like a two-dimensional thing. And I was like, why didn't I didn't hear like many of my friends tell me about this. I'm like, it was so cool.
I had the exact same reaction. The moon stole the show for me, quite honestly. Yes, and I had the exact same response, that it just being able to see the three-dimensionality of the moon was just mind-blowing to me. I'm so glad to hear you say that.
Yeah, because no one really, they say this stuff, but I was like, look at this. It looked like a basketball, and especially with your background, I think with the geology, you could see the craters and the different colors. So the moon was, because we're so much closer to the moon than we are to the stars, like you said, stole the show. I was like, why didn't I, so I'm glad to hear a geologist say that too.
Absolutely.
So I agree. Cool. Thank you.
And we have our last two questions right back here.
Hi, my question is regarding mental and emotional health. Being there at a space station for 6 months, do you guys have any check-ins at all? How often? And a second question, what makes you more anxious, takeoff or splashdown?
Okay, I'll try to remember both questions. To answer your first question, yes. So we have an amazing team of behavioral health, health and performance team that checks in with us on our way. So as part of training, we have a few check-ins with them before we launch, and then while we're up there, I believe it was once every 2 weeks. So every other week, they were checking in with us and checking in with our families as well, and making sure that we're happy and healthy. So we're really grateful for that resource on that team. I knew I'd forget the second question.
The second was.
Yes. Thank you. So I think that they had different emotions, and so it's hard to compare them apples to apples because you just you're handling different emotions in a different way. So it's kind of the culmination and commencement part of launch, and then the kind of bittersweet feelings of landing. And so, but they were both wild rides, I'll tell you that.
And our last question right here.
I was wondering how much space travel has changed between your two experiences. Because time has passed, but I don't know how different was it, and is there something, Mike, apart from pizza, that you saw on the other missions and was like, man, I wish we had that? And so how different were the experiences?
Between us or within?
Between us.
Yeah, I think so. My missions were shuttle missions, which were shorter. My first one was 12 days. My second day was 14. I went to the Hubble telescope, and it was our mission was all about spacewalking. In fact, some of my, Jill and Justin, two of my good friends here who trained me to do that job, are here over with some robot stuff over there. Great people who I trained with twice. Where are they? Are they here? There you go, Jill's right there. So just awesome people. We became good friends and somehow they were able to even teach me. But we were there. It was all about the telescope and the spacewalking. And it was relatively short missions, a lot of training underwater for those spacewalks, and that's what the missions I were on were like. And I would, much different model, I think, from what you did.
Yeah, and I would say the other huge difference is just the vehicle, the type of vehicle that we flew on. So, so Mike flew on a space shuttle, which, was built like an airplane, essentially, right? And so landed on a runway, very similar to how an airplane lands, as opposed to the SpaceX Dragon that I flew on is really more of a capsule shape and feel. And so when we landed in the ocean, and just a splash down in the ocean, and then a boat came and picked us up. So that kind of difference in the actual vehicle, the transport vehicle to and from.
Yeah, the automation, we were talking about this earlier, the space shuttle, like the one you see here, was flown manually. So the men and women who were the pilot, all the pilots that we had, the commanders that we had, those folks were highly trained test pilots, as a lot of astronauts still are today. But it took a lot of training, years of training, thousands and thousands and thousands of hours, but there's very little technology to support you in doing that. So it's very, very intensive from a crew perspective. And I think the other thing is
just what you guys are doing. It's pretty amazing what you're doing now. I mean, the vegetable gardens that they've got going on, all these amazing experience, the level of research. With my time as an astronaut, in addition to the Hubble stuff, as you said earlier, we were building space station.
Yep.
So a lot of the missions were about building this great laboratory. Yes. And now you're still doing maintenance and still adding things, but now it's so science oriented, and there, you know, the way that what I see, the way it's grown, I'm just in awe of what Jessica and the current astronauts are doing now, and very excited for what's going to come. So I think the use of technology and the advances they've made in the science that you're able to do up there is just, you know, compared to what we had when I was there over a decade ago, you know, it's really made some amazing advancements that I think will continue as we go further.
All right, so that was absolutely phenomenal. Give it up for Mike Massimino and Jessica Watkins. Thank you both so much again. That was incredible. I can't think of a better perspective, you know, to be asking some of these questions too. Phenomenal. Thank you again. So everyone, once again, thank you for joining us for Kids Week, and for those of you who are tuning in for Astro Live as well, thank you also to the New York Space Grant Consortium for helping us to support this show. And again, I'd like to give a special shout out to our American Sign Language interpreters for being here for our presentations today too. That's how you applaud it. There you go. So friends, there is still plenty of time to check out the cool exhibits that we have out here on the floor and meet some of our NASA friends as well. Also, don't forget to check out the Space Shuttle Pavilion upstairs and our new exhibit, Postcards from Earth. Very cool project about the CubeSat project. And for those of you who are watching at home, I am now going to throw it over to Das up there. So everyone have a wonderful Kids Week. We'll see you soon.
All right, bear with us just a second here, folks, while we change our cameras. We'll have Jessica joining us up here, and we'll also have the ASL interpreter. So just bear with us. button on the bottom, just tap the
Hi, can you all hear me now? We were muted. Let's get some 5x5s in chat. If so, anyone, can you hear us?
Check, test.
There's a little button on the bottom.
Test? All right.
Awesome. All right, so
Harder than
let's try that
spaceflight.
again. Harder than spaceflight. That was our bug. That's right. So everyone, surprise, hello, welcome back. So we are so thrilled to have Jessica Watkins here of the Crew 4 mission. Of course, you just saw her awesome conversation with Mike Massimino. And so now we are so lucky we're going to pick your brain just a little bit, a little one-on-one here for our viewers at home. So it's, first of all, this is really wonderful. Is this your first time to the Intrepid? I'm just curious.
It is, yes.
Oh,
This is my first visit. Yeah.
That's awesome. Something that a lot of people say when they first walk in is they get hit with the smell of our ship. This is a really old ship, you know, it was created in 1943 and it was in service for many years through the Vietnam War. And you can really tell it is just entrenched with like jet fuel.
Yeah.
So a lot of people say that. I'm curious, a lot of people say who have been to the ISS that the ISS has a smell too.
Yeah.
Did you notice like a particular smell in the ISS when you were there?
Yeah, so it definitely has a bit of kind of a machinery smell, or a little bit of almost like a burnt metal type of smell. Not dissimilar to an active ship where we have all that kind of equipment running.
Sure. Cool. So this was your first time in space. I'm so curious, you know, and I think a lot of people probably are too. It's hard to be an astronaut. It's hard to get there. Not many of us will ever have that chance. What did it feel like to be in that crew capsule on top of that Falcon 9 rocket when you were going up? What physically did it feel like? What was going through your head? And then also, was it something you were prepared for? Did you feel that your training kind of adequately gave you those sensations riding it?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll start with your last question. I think we definitely feel very prepared for essentially all phases of flight that we encounter during our mission. And so, you know, we really are kind of in an operational mindset where we're ready to put that training to work and really apply that training in the real scenario. So that's certainly a large portion of kind of what we're feeling and experiencing is really just kind of the adrenaline around locking in and getting the job done. In terms of physical feelings, we definitely, as the rocket starts to spool up, you start to go through the first stage, you feel the G's as they come on, kind of through the chest, and so it really pushes you back into your seat. You feel those G's build over time with the second stage, and then after about 8.5 minutes, all of that gets released, and you kind of fall forward into your seat, if you will, and you're in space. And so it's a pretty abrupt feeling. It's not this kind of slow sensation of working your way into space. It really is a discrete moment where you realize, you know, we're floating now and we're in orbit. So pretty exciting.
I've heard a lot of astronauts who have ridden on the Dragon crew capsule say that it felt alive.
Yeah.
That it felt like you were on top of like a living, breathing like dragon. You know, did you kind of get that sensation too, that it was breathing and really?
Yeah, and you certainly can see that as you're looking at the rocket in the days leading up to launch as well. You see the Dragon kind of sweating and breathing in that sense, and so it starts to give off this feeling that definitely continues through launch.
That is incredible. What would you say was your favorite part? Was it the launch? Was it the re-entry? Was it the splashdown? Or you mentioned before they all kind of were a little different. What was the most thrilling thing for you?
I really definitely enjoyed re-entry. That was definitely kind of a fun ride, and just the kind of emotions of coming back home. That was pretty fun.
And you said you were ready. After 6 months, you were ready to come home. So we've got some questions from our viewers who are tuning in from home. Our first question here is from ISS Above. One of their favorite photos of you was one of showing a very contemplative moment looking out the cupola window. It's actually one of the images that we showed for our promotion for this program. So do you remember that moment and what was going through your head when you were looking out that window?
I'm not sure if I know exactly which photo you're talking about, but certainly every time I was looking out the cupola, you know, just looking back down at the Earth and just recognizing just the uniqueness of the you know, the place that we call home, and really just trying to take in all of the the beauty and just the magic of our home from that perspective.
And you took a lot of photos too while you were up there,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
So as a geologist, was there anything in particular that you were looking for here on Earth when you were taking those?
Yeah, so certainly there are a few places where I've done field work, done some work on the ground, and done some further analysis in those particular spots. So to be able to see those from the orbital perspective as well, and be able to kind of marry those two things, both the ground perspective and the orbital one, was a pretty neat experience to be able to do.
And a lot of astronauts have that, they say the overview effect of being in space, seeing the Earth with no borders, and just having that resonate with you. Did you get that?
Yeah, I think it definitely confirms for you, what you already know and believe to be true about, how interconnected we are and interdependent we are.
That's so great. So Tony Judson says, do you think that being a geologist will help with Artemis crew selection? I know maybe we can't go too in depth with that. And what do you think the most important question that a geologist can answer on the moon, and specifically with the South Pole where we'll be heading back to?
Yeah, I definitely think geology will be a big part of the lunar effort, just in enabling the most science that we can get out of the lunar surface and of going back. So definitely excited to contribute to that effort in some way. And yeah, I think for me the most interesting questions that we can start to ask is really, by going to a different location than we went to for Apollo, we're able to just add different puzzle pieces to the puzzle. And so if you kind of imagine going to the Earth and landing in Kansas, for example, and learning all about Kansas, and then trying to apply that to the rest of Earth, you would be sorely, you'd be missing a large portion of what's going on Earth. And so we think about that similarly to the moon. Going to a new location is really just going to add so much information to our database and understanding of how the moon was formed, and then as a result, how the Earth was formed, and the moon's history within that.
So you are a member of the Artemis Team, which means you are eligible to go to the moon. Mm-hmm. So what are you most excited about getting your hands on when you possibly maybe get there someday? Is there anything in particular about the moon's surface that you are just dying to learn more about?
Yeah, I think one thing that we're really excited about as part of the Artemis program is looking at polar volatiles. So looking at areas on the moon where we see ice and other types of volatiles, and using those as kind of in situ resources, being able to utilize them in ways that will be useful in the long term. And so being able to investigate those, find ways to collect samples of those, bring them back particularly to the lab at the Johnson Space Center, and be able to investigate them further would be really exciting.
And let's say hypothetical, you were to be the first woman to land on the moon, okay? Had you given any thought to what would be your first words if you landed on the moon?
Yeah, definitely haven't gotten that far yet. Definitely one step at a time.
Sure.
But super excited about the idea and excited that the next kind of cadre of people that go to the moon will be my colleagues and my friends, and that's just super exciting.
I ask because I had the opportunity to meet Christina Koch, and she was asked that question, and she said it was a joke amongst some of the astronauts that they would say, "Is this enough for you, Mom?" So I just thought that'd be really funny. So what is a question, just kind of rounding it out here, what's something that nobody asks you that you wish someone would ask you? What's something that people should know about what you're doing right now?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I have something that nobody's really asked me before. But yeah, I think, what I take away certainly from my experience, leading up to this point and my time on the mission was definitely just the importance of teamwork and having people in your life that will support and encourage you along the way, and then really just allow you to be successful and thrive along the way. So having mentors and role models, coaches, teammates along the way is really important.
And you mentioned earlier, too, your time playing rugby. She's a rugby star, guys. That really helped you with that teamwork element, too, of being able to work together. I love that analogy. That's wonderful. So what's next for you?
So now that we are back, so I just got back a few months ago, and we were given a bit of time to kind of focus on reintegrating with the family and getting used to life back on Earth again. And then after that, we will kind of get assigned to different technical jobs, different roles within the supporting the mission of human spaceflight. So we'll see what that ends up kind of being, but I'm excited to contribute towards that effort.
And we can't wait to see what you have coming up, too. It's so exciting.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you so much again, Jessica, for being here. This was absolutely wonderful. And, of course, everyone at home is so thankful as well. This was really, really great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So, everyone, we encourage you to tune in next month for our next Astro Live. We'll be talking about robotic arms. So we actually have someone from the Canadian Space Agency, a mission controller for the Canadarm2 on the ISS. Did you ever get to use the robotic arm on the ISS?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, you could tune in too then.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got Danielle Cormier, and we've also got someone who actually created the European space arm too. The robotic arm up there on the ISS, the new one that can crawl around on its own. It's so cool. Awesome. So be sure to tune in to that. That's going to be March 19th at 3 p.m. on all of our streaming channels and NASA Spaceflight as well. So once again, coming to you live from Kids Week at the Intrepid Sea, Air and Space Museum. Thank you once again, Jessica Watkins, NASA astronaut, and we'll see you later, nerds.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
RCP chamber pressure looks good. Doubling up.
Roger, roll, Atlantis. Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango Delta nominal. Flight count speed off. Bring in, speed off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.